All right, we are back with an interview, the last one before you guys go back in for the next technical presentation for the virtual conference. But I'm here with Sunil. Sunil, thanks for being here with us.
Hi Jennifer, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Nice to see you again. Sunil, you're a familiar face at some of these conferences. I've seen you in Chicago, here, all over. So see you lots of places, and you obviously get out a lot at the conferences and see kind of the trends. So let's talk about the last session you were in and what that was on, and some of the things just for the folks out there watching that they may want to tune in to or check out.
So the last session that I was talking, which I just finished right now, was on test data management and especially automation of the test data management in context of Agile and DevOps.
Yes.
So there are a lot of ground that we covered, and especially it's like people are getting mixed up between Agile and DevOps. And they start to use these terms in a very, loosely coupled way. Right. So we really, it's like a lot of the questions that were coming from the audience, where a lot of people are trying to seek clarity in terms of, what the difference is, and does it even apply to them from a DevOps perspective.
Right.
So we touched upon a lot of the things where, like it really becomes important how to have a good Agile, working, and which is primarily, like based in terms of how you build your products and your software, and how you collaborate with the team, and how you, like use certain pieces of the technology. So a lot of the people were not even like stabilized, on this whole Agile, and they were just wanting to do DevOps. So the difference there was like they were not understanding that, like when you start to get into the DevOps and you get into this whole thing about the continuous integration, continuous development, it really becomes a big time of a technology layer. Right. So what that means is that, is like you want to like have everything in a very instant way being shipped to your customers, whatever code changes, whatever new products you are building. But that's not just a human element. There is a lot of the technology that is used to have that continuous integration and continuous deployment. So one of the important things that we discussed about, when you look at last few years, all the money and the innovation that went in was in the development layer. So everything was being done to make the life of the developers easy and for them to build the new things in a very fast way. So you talk about Jiras, you talk about Jenkins, you talk about Calabash, you talk about anything, that was the whole technology layer for development. But from a testing perspective, it was at best some people or some standalone tools. And those were pointed tools. You talk about Selenium, you talk about, Test Complete, QA Symphony, you talk about, UFT, but at best they were individual tools. But the main thing here is that, like unless we infuse a lot of the technology in that and raise the bar here, and then the development and the testing layer talk to each other with the integrated technology, it's never going to be a true CI/CD and the DevOps thing.
Exactly.
So that's what resonated, like with a lot of the people, where they felt that, the break point was happening.
Well, and putting kind of that perspective on it of saying, here's what kind of occurred, because a lot of people have said, all of a sudden it felt like development could push code and deploy to all of these things instantaneously. And testers were just getting buried. Is what I was hearing as a common theme. The test team is just getting buried and we can't keep up now. And we were starting to see that in order to keep pace, when we used to talk way back with testing about ratios. That the ratios were dramatically shifting, where you needed almost more testers than developers. Or a significantly higher number of them all of a sudden. And a lot of that probably had a little bit to do with those tools and the inconsistencies in the capability, the tooling, the options for developers versus the options and the tools for testing. To be able to keep up with that.
And that is absolutely correct, and your thoughts are exactly what resonated with the audience as well. And a very practical thing that I was hearing from everybody is like, in a 2-week sprint, the testers get called in the Wednesday night of the second week, and Friday is due. So how do you get things done in that like 2-day stuff? So the main thing is like, unless you start very early on in the sprint and do that in sprint automation, and Agile is never going to be successful and scalable. And so this, like is very important to have that successful Agile. But when you go to this whole DevOps thing and start to talk about the technology integration and the technology layer, and you bring in the context of this test data management that we were talking, it's no more a standalone test data or no more a standalone test environment. It needs to be available at the same speed as you are expecting the code to go out and test it. So you need that actual data available at the different stages of that SDLC cycle. So that was like, like one important area. But I would say that, like a lot of people were, kind of like struggling in terms of, like how to make that happen. But, they could at least see that this could be a big showstopper for you to have the actual CI/CD done, unless you bring in this element of test environment and test data in the mix of the technology layer as well, for you to like actually have that deployment.
So getting clarity and kind of back to the beginning of what we talked about around terminology and creating a common language about the pieces and the order in which the pieces fit together, right? Because sometimes people want to skip to, it's just like when we read a book. Everyone skips to the back and just reads the last page to figure out what happened. But you actually have to start from the beginning and put all the pieces in place in the right order to make it successful, to make it to the end. And I think I've seen a lot of companies who've said, oh, just give me DevOps. I just want to go to DevOps. Let's get there, right? And they don't have all the components they need to be successful in that. So get that terminology. It sounds like is something you would recommend. Common terms, do them in the right order, make sure you understand what they all are and how they play together. And not so loosely couple and combine everything together about what you're trying to achieve, know what you're trying to achieve, what the objective is.
Absolutely correct. And one, last thing I would share is that there was a lot of discussion around, the real meaning, applicability of DevOps, because a lot of the people just carried away by it and not even fully understanding and appreciating if it is required or not.
Do I need it?
Does
it make sense?
So when you talk about these organizations, like Amazons, like Facebooks, who have a different type of a business, who needs a lot more, agility and speed, because they're a more B2C type of the models, right? It's a good thing and a right thing to do. So I'm also proponent of that, but it's not like a blind faith.
Not blind faith, to just do it just because everyone else is.
So the organizations, like who do not have that need of sending, code 10 times a day, doesn't have to unnecessarily push themselves in that direction. If you are, in a different business model, right, it's like, it's okay to ship, once a day or once in 2 days or once a week, right? So that clarity is absolutely required. Otherwise, you burn too many cycles, right, and don't go anywhere. But the important part is, software development, product development is changing, right? And embracing automation is important. DevOps and Agile is the new norm, right?
Absolutely.
And people should accept and see that through, but be very careful and adapt to whatever will apply for them.
And it applies differently depending on, like you said, your business model, what you do, what industry you're in, what you're trying to achieve, but understand it. I thought it was interesting a couple years ago when DevOps as a term came out and there was a lot of talk about it. It was like the new buzzword for a while, and you saw all these jobs pop up for DevOps, like thousands of jobs for a DevOps person. And then you would ask people, well, what is that? And they'd be like, well, I don't know, but we need one because they got one, so we need one. And it was like the new thing that everyone wanted, but they didn't know what it was or why they wanted it. They just wanted it. So I think a key is understand why, why, what it is, and do I need it? And how does it apply?
And one other, thing where we spend a lot of the time discussing about this stuff was actually correcting the definition. What I mean by that is like, this is, a collection of very smart testing brains here in Orlando. And when you talk about DevOps, right, it kind of like gives you that notion that testing is not required. It's DevOps. You develop, you operate, or it will, get done right the first time and here it goes out. But that whole definition, needs to be corrected. And I, like try to, say it a lot wherever the opportunity comes is Dev, Test, Ops.
I love it.
So that brings the fundamental that testing is an integral part of it, right? And who does testing and how it's done is a different question, but you have to develop, you have to test, and then you roll out. And so Dev, Test, Ops is really what brings things back. And I think that's a definition that should be used going forward.
I know. See, we're going to make it go viral now. So all of you out there should start saying Dev Test Ops.
Dev Test Ops is really putting the right perspective into the things
a new term that we all have now. So Sunil, it goes so fast, but thanks for being here with us, and I appreciate all your insights and all the things you shared with us, and hopefully we'll see you again and catch up with you next time. For the folks out there, enjoy the technical presentation. We'll be back with one last interview after that.
Thank you very much, Jennifer.
Thank you, Sunil.
Thank you.